All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Hope you've had a good reInvent so far. I'm Ankur Mehrotra. I'm the GM for Amazon SageMaker. And today I'm joined by Sai, who's a principal product manager on the SageMaker service team, as well as by Dominic from Fidelity Investments, who are a key Amazon SageMaker customers. And we're here today to talk to you about ML governance and also about some of the ML governance-related capabilities that we've launched in SageMaker this week. So, a few years ago, when I used to meet customers at reInvent, when I asked them, hey, help me understand how you're using machine learning in your organizations, and are you using machine learning models in production and at scale? The answer that I used to get was somewhat on the lines of, well, yeah, we've built machine learning models, and we also have pilots running, and we've seen some good results, but we are not yet using them at scale in production. Fast forward to today, machine learning, it's clear, has broken through or broken free through the shackles of POCs and pilots, and is very much being used to make critical business decisions in production at scale. We have customers who are using machine learning to provide recommendations, personalized recommendations in media streaming applications. We have customers who are using machine learning to detect manufacturing defects in an assembly line, or customers who are using machine learning to detect skin aneurysms using images of veins, you name it. Now, let's look at what a typical process for implementing a machine learning solution in an enterprise looks like. So typically, technical and business stakeholders get together. They define a problem, and then they identify a solution and analyze the solution for the cost and the potential impact. And this oftentimes gets validated through proof of concepts or experiments. And if the results are good, then this solution can be deployed in production. However, since these ML models are making critical business decisions for the business, it's important for enterprises to add proper guardrails throughout their ML life cycle to ensure that the security, privacy, and quality of the models and the data that is being used to train them is preserved. But doing this is getting harder for enterprises because the ML processes and activities within an enterprise are becoming more complex. So let's understand what's driving this complexity. So first of all, in the last few years, ML has graduated from a data scientist-only activity to a much more involved process that requires contributions from multiple different kinds of stakeholders. Unlike before, when machine learning was mostly skewed heavily towards data preparation and model training, now multiple stakeholders are coming together to implement ML solutions at scale. We're seeing data engineers get involved with building large-scale data lakes to support machine learning workloads. Data scientists continue to excel at data preparation and model training. We're seeing, in many cases, legal and compliance teams get involved to review the model and approve it for use in specific situations. We're also seeing ML engineers and ML ops teams who contribute in terms of building automated pipelines and putting models and deploying them in production. And business stakeholders are getting more engaged in terms of helping define which ML model should be used when. So all in all, there is a surge in the number of stakeholders involved. And this surge is driving the need for ML systems to support new capabilities for these new stakeholders. Another thing we're seeing is that since ML is now making its way into mainstream business applications, the number of models within an enterprise are growing exponentially. And it's becoming harder for enterprises to apply the right guardrails across such a large number of models. And lastly, over the last few years, what we've seen is that many government bodies across the globe have proposed regulations that may require enterprises to create more visibility and transparency across their ML processes and systems. So this may involve, for example, the ability to answer questions such as, what data was used to train your machine learning models? What stakeholders were involved in the approval process? Or what other decisions were taken during the model development process? So this complexity together is giving the rise to the need for building additional capabilities within ML systems, which we broadly categorize as ML governance. You can think of ML governance as the ability to control, validate, and oversee people, process, and technology that's required to implement ML solutions at scale. So let's look at what specific ML governance capabilities are needed in ML systems. To do this, let's look at the very first step in every ML journey, which is to get your users, your ML practitioners, onboarded onto your ML systems. So when administrators are required to onboard new users, they have to consider a lot of information. First, they want to make sure that these users get access to the tools and resources they need to do their job and accelerate machine learning development. But at the same time, they want to ensure that proper access controls are in place with least privileges to ensure that ML activities are performed in a safe and secure manner. So to do this, they have to consider a lot of information. For example, they have to consider what kind of activities this user needs to perform. Do they need to prepare data and train models? Or do they need to build pipelines and deploy models? Or do they just need to review and audit model performance metrics? They also need to consider what kind of resources this user needs access to. Do they need access to specific S3 buckets or code repositories or ECR images? And then they need to consider whether there are specific security requirements that this user needs to operate within. For example, do they need to use specific encryption keys, or do they need to operate within a networking boundary? These requirements differ from data engineers to data scientists to ML ops engineers, business stakeholders, et cetera. And setting up the right access controls and permissions for each type of user is time-consuming and error-prone because it requires a lot of manual work across multiple disparate systems. When users are onboarded, then ML practitioners or users, they can start doing the job. So let's take an example of a data scientist. When a data scientist is training, building machine learning models, there are a lot of decisions they have to take. So for example, they may need to decide whether to pick one algorithm versus another, or what loss function to use, or what specific hyperparameter search technique to use. They also analyze the model behavior based on specific inputs. For example, they may find that the model performs really well and meets performance and accuracy goals for a specific age group, but not for another age group. Or a model may be fit to deploy in a specific geography, but not globally. All this qualitative and quantitative information must be captured at one place so that it can later be used during model approval or to troubleshoot model performance issues should they occur in a production setting, or even to answer questions or create evidence during regulatory audits. So today, data scientists use all kinds of ad hoc tools to capture and record this information and share with others, including emails or SharePoint and other things. So this makes the whole process really hard, and it can lead to inconsistent and incomplete information being captured, which can in turn result in delay in model approvals, or when it's time to troubleshoot a particular issue, it can cause, if the right information is not available, it can cause delays. And also it can make it much harder to answer questions when there is an audit going on at any point of time in the ML lifecycle. And lastly, when models are in production, they need to be continuously monitored. Because if, let's say, there are model performance issues that suddenly develop, such as a sudden change in accuracy or bias, then you want to make sure that you're catching those issues proactively, because if they go unnoticed, then they may negatively impact the business or its customers. And even when these issues are proactively detected, it is important that engineers are able to troubleshoot them and fix them quickly to minimize the business impact. And in order to do that, they need to be able to access information about the model, its performance history, its lineage, whether similar issues have occurred before and how they were resolved really quickly. So all in all, our customers are telling us that implementing ML governance across their systems and processes is becoming increasingly harder, and it involves a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting, and it takes time away from working on tasks that add value to their customers. So in 2017, we launched Amazon SageMaker, which is a service for end-to-end machine learning development. I'm proud to tell you that this week we celebrated the 5-year anniversary for SageMaker. Over the last 5 years, SageMaker has become one of the fastest growing AWS service. And today it's used by tens of thousands of AWS customers and who are using the service to build models with billions of parameters and making more than 1 trillion predictions per month. So we're really excited about the momentum here. And now, this week, we've launched new capabilities to address the challenges customers face related to ML governance. And so these were announced yesterday in Swami's keynote. So the first thing we've launched is SageMaker Role Manager. So Role Manager helps you onboard new users quickly by providing ways to set up the right access controls in a very simple way. Role Manager provides you pre-built templates based on roles and activities that you can get started with and then add additional information such as the resource needs as well as some of the security and networking requirements. Then we also launched SageMaker Model Cards, which help you create a single source of truth for your models by centralizing and standardizing all model information at one place. You can add information to your model card through an easy-to-use guided workflow, but also SageMaker automates some of the information to be added to the model card, such as some of the training details, such as the data sets being used for training and the metrics generated during the training process. And that really accelerates the model documentation process. You can share these model cards with other stakeholders during model reviews or when a model performance issue needs to be troubleshooted or during audits. And lastly, we also launched Model Dashboard that helps you unify all your model information at one place, including model lineage, performance history, as well as model cards. Model Dashboard also provides you with alerts whenever the best practices, such as automated monitoring of models using SageMaker Model Monitor, have not been configured. Now, let's take a deeper look at how these capabilities work. And for that, let me invite Sai to do a demo.
Hi, everybody. I hope you've been having an exciting week. I certainly have. So as Ankur said, I'm here to demo to you the 3 ML governance features that we launched yesterday in Swami's keynote as part of Amazon SageMaker. So let me take you through a quick scenario. For the first feature, say you have in your companies, Alice is a data scientist at your company, And she needs access to SageMaker Studio to build and train a model to help with customer churn. So she's tasked with identifying if a customer is going to churn of your current mobile provider, and then based on that, identify certain promotions that you can target towards those customers to increase customer retention. Now, even before Alice can get started with her data science journey with building these models, the ML administrator needs to set her up with the right set of permissions. Now, the ML administrator is always trying to balance giving her enough permissions so she has the accesses that she needs, but not too much, because there are security guardrails that the enterprise needs to confine to. So let's quickly see how an ML administrator can set her up with permissions so that, in a few minutes. Give me 2 minutes here. So for the first features, which we call Amazon SageMaker Role Manager, you just go to the SageMaker console, and here you go to Getting Started. And as you can see, you can create a role very easily right from here. So the administrator would go to the role, and they would give the role, let's just call the role Data Scientist for Alice. And then let's just give a brief description. This role should allow her to prepare data and train a model. Now, as Ankur alluded to his conversation when he was talking about the key benefits, we provide policy templates for each of these personas. So we have taken, based on all the customer research, we've templatized the set of activities that a data scientist would usually do. And so there's a data scientist persona, and there are other personas like MLOps, and you can also start creating custom roles. So let's select data scientist because Alice is a data scientist. And then you set up your network conditions. Here, again, another 2 default security parameters that companies have always used for their employees are to ensure there is always traffic flowing through a VPC, and 2 is that all the data is encrypted with customer managed keys. So here you turn on your VPC settings, you select a subnet, and then you select a security group, and you turn on your encryption conditions, and you select a data encryption key, and then you also select a volume encryption key. Now, as you can see, you can easily create your own KMS key right from there if you are not provided one, if the administrator doesn't have one. And then you go to next. Now, if you remember, in the first step, we selected the data scientist persona role. Now, based on the selection in the first step, the set of ML activities that we think Alice needs access to are already pre-selected. And so for today, as Ankur also showed in the Amazon SageMaker slide, we cater to multiple personas ranging from business analysts to data scientists to data engineer to legal officers to ML engineers. So you can imagine the permutations and combinations an admin is going through when they're putting up these accesses. So that's where you can select a very granular set of activities that you want to select or allow or deny. And these are already pre-selected based on the persona you selected. Now you can unclick some of them, and then you can customize your role. Now for each of these actions, because some of them, for example, say manage ML jobs, they can run after Alice has logged off from the SageMaker Studio environment, which means the system, the administrator, needs to give SageMaker the permission to spin up compute resources and execute those training jobs or those processing jobs. Because Alice will put up her notebook, schedule it, and log off. And that's where the concept of a pass role comes into play. And here is where the administrator would have, just give me. Yeah, so the administrator would have created a pass role, which is literally a role which provides SageMaker access to 4 sets of services: VPC, S3, KMS, and CloudWatch for logging. So that's just that one role. You add that to Alice's each of the sets of actions where it is required. So it's required in a few of our actions, not all. And so we add that role, and then you just add an S3 bucket. And she would need the access to the S3 bucket so that the system can write her model or any process data set into. So that's the S3 bucket you give. Now, in the step 3, you can also attach certain additional IAM policies that you've created outside. Say Alice needs access to an Athena query. Or say she needs access to the CloudTrail access policy. So you just select that query, and you can attach it. Then we've also seen customers tagging their roles for cost management, for understanding which department is funding the project, things like that. So you can easily add that as, as a business department. And then you can just say marketing here. And so you add a tag, and then you click next. And then here's where you review all the role information you provided. So first you just selected your template, your persona template, and then you see your set of activities based on the persona, then any additional policies and tags, and then you just click submit. And this creates an IAM role. So yeah, so see there, if you have a role that already exists, then it will certainly do that. You cannot use this role again. So here, so because this exists, so we'll say, let's just change this role. And let's say test Alice. It keeps all of the information for you. And there's your role. So the beauty of this is that we create the role using our AWS IAM constructs. So if you go to this role, you can use all the security operational processes that you already are used to using with AWS IAM. So as you can see, this is the role that got created. And you can see these are all the policy templates that were attached to the role. So they're as granular as they can get. Now, this is just us setting up permissions for Alice as a data scientist. Now she needs a user profile, and she needs the role to be associated to the user profile. So if you go into Amazon SageMaker and go into domains, so I've already pre-created a domain, a SageMaker Studio domain, which can house multiple data scientists, multiple user profiles. So I click on a domain, and here you have different user profiles. So you can say add user, and just say I want to give Alice a user profile. Now, as you can see here, we have the role here that we just created, SageMaker test Alice. So I select the role, and then I just go ahead with setting her up with the right set of permissions. Now, because I already created a role for Alice, this is the role I pre-created, the user profile with the permissions. So she goes here to launch, and she can just easily launch Studio and open up a notebook and start doing her data science work. So that's how easy it is to manage your role, manage permissions, and make sure they only have the right set of permissions. So now moving on to the second feature that we have here. So the second feature that we launched was SageMaker model cards. Now, the administrator has done their job of enabling Alice with the right set of permissions so that she can go ahead and get started with creating the model, building the model, testing the model, validating the model. But as you're all aware, the auditors or the approver workflows within an enterprise require Alice to document every decision, assumption, and observation she's making throughout the development process. Now, it's human tendency to forget things. So we want to make sure we're documenting it proactively rather than reactively. So that's where SageMaker model cards come in. And let me quickly demo to you how easy it is for Alice to document her decisions. Now, similar to the role manager, you go on to the SageMaker console, and here is a model card hub. These are some of the previous model cards that we've already created. And so now I'll take you through a workflow where Alice can go ahead and create a model card. Now, so we click Create Model Card, and say I give the name, I'm just going to create a customer churn model. So I'm just going to give the customer churn model card name there. And then I put it in a draft status because I'm not really sure I'm ready for the model card to be complete. And so I'm just going to put it in a draft status. Now you can even encrypt your model card with customer managed keys. So we give the key, and that says that all of your data you put into a model card is protected with keys you manage. So we have no access to that information. Now, this model was built and trained on SageMaker. So if it was built and trained on SageMaker, if I'm able to just give the customer churn model name here, and I click find model details, because it was trained on SageMaker, it makes use of the underlying ecosystem to find details about the model. So as you can see, it published the model ARN, which is the resource identifier, the artifacts, and also the environment it is okay to put the model for deployment, so the inference environment. Now we can give some description to it. So I can just say, understand the customer churn here. And then I can say this model is the model version 1. And then what's the problem type? So it's a linear regression. And say I'm just going to put algorithm type as well. And I'm going to say a model creator is Alice. And then I'm just going to say the model owner is the marketing department, though. Now, intended uses. This has come up in the recent few years that everybody doing model development should really document the intended usage of a model. Because as we all know, to ensure that the models are used responsibly, we have to make sure that the people who are deploying the model and using it in business applications are abiding by the uses this model was intended for. So that's where we are encouraging data scientists to document the general purpose of this model, the use cases it's intended for, and any use cases that it was not intended for. For example, in the geography example, you can clearly say this loan application model was not intended for the North America region, but is intended for, say, Singapore. Because we always observe that based on the traffic patterns that come into an endpoint, there can be model quality issues in the real with production data. So that's why it's very important to document intended uses. So let's just say this is used to identify customer segments for understanding offering market promotions. Now, what are some factors affecting model efficacy? So here we said it's going to be the size of the data set and the geographic features in the data in that data set. For example, the promotions, the customer churn can happen more based on the age group of a population within a certain geography. So if Alice was using, zip code in her training data, it may impact how effectively the model is going to really perform in real world. So that's something we document. Now, risk rating. So let's call this a low risk rating. Why? Because companies attribute a risk to a model based on the impact the model has to their business. So say we were in a healthcare setting and the model was impacting patient outcomes. Then companies would want to associate a certain risk factor to it based on how it is really impacting the patient outcome. Is there a doctor in the loop, et cetera? So that's where it's very important to document your risk rating. And here we're saying low only because this is only for time-bound promotions. So it's going to be time-bound, so there's not going to be a big dent to the revenue, and it's not like a forever promotion. So that way, we're saying it's a low risk. Now, in here, the second step is where we capture the training information about the model. Now, if you remember, in the first step, I said, because once you give the model name, we discover information if you were using more of the SageMaker ecosystem. Similarly, using the model name, we discovered all of the training details for you. The job name, any input data sets that we use to train the model, the training environment. Now, why is it so important to document training environment versus inference environment? We know that a change in environment, customers do optimize their inference environment for cost. It might not be so in the training set, but when you change an environment, it can bring about a change in model behavior in production. And that's why it's important to document your environments in training and in inference. And then it also pulls up a bunch of training results. Now here is where, but Alice, what it can't pull up from the system is those judgment calls she's making. For example, what is the objective function she really wanted to optimize the training for? This is a very subjective decision she's doing as she's thinking of the training. So she decided to minimize loss rather than maximize accuracy. So that's something she has to document. Now here, notes on objective function. So why did you, Alice, decide to do this objective function? What was your thought process? What other objective functions did you consider? That's the type of documentation we want her to document here. And then, at the end of it, what about the training observations? So she decided on an objective function. Why she did that, she's documented it. System discovered all the training information for her. Now with the results that came out, what is her observations? So she can say, works for geographies with 20 to 50, something like that. Like she can put her observations, and it performs well with this, it doesn't perform well with these data sets, whatever she's thinking of. Then we go next, and then we come to the next step of the model card creation, which is about evaluation. So now in the evaluation workflow, why is evaluation such an important step? When a data scientist finishes training their model, they do run tests. They validate their model. But we've also observed that companies need an independent auditing happening on their models before they put it into production. That's where evaluation of their models comes into play. And companies are evaluating their models with specialized data set that may not look nothing like the training data set. They use restricted data sets. And the auditors and the approvers of a model, the reviewers of a model, need to see that information to make sure, did the data scientist heed back when somebody evaluated the model and when they put in their observations? How far away was the evaluation on a specialized data set compared to training data set? And that's where we are encouraging customers to document evaluation observations. And so here, I have a JSON file that I already ran. So again, coming to evaluation, if you're using more of the SageMaker ecosystem, so for example, if you're using Model Monitor and Clarify to evaluate your models, and you have run a job that the output is in a specific JSON, you just upload that manually. We do all of the schema translations for you and display the results in a very human-readable format. So here I'm going to just upload, it was a Model Monitor model quality job that I have. So I'm going to upload it, and then I'm just going to give this job a name. I'm calling it job 1, and I'm going to click add to model card. And now, you can add as many number of evaluation jobs you want, because you might once evaluate model quality, you might evaluate data quality a different time, bias drift a different time. So you can come back and put as many evaluation jobs. Every time you do that, we version your model card for you. So you can go back in time and see the entire audit trail of who did what and what did they observe. Now, so coming to evaluation observations, so we can write down some observations here, and then you have your data set that I would put in here, which was where is the data set that you actually evaluated on, because sometimes auditors do want to go look at that specific data set. And then you have all the evaluation results here. And so that's about the evaluation. You can add more metric fields if you have. You can add any metadata for your evaluation metadata. You can add some of the metadata that you choose to. And then you come to the last step again, which is more of the qualitative information. Here is where, to make sure your model is used responsibly, is developed responsibly, we want customers to enter ethical considerations. This comes in very apt for when you're doing like face recognition models, and where there may be certain religions that require people to have a certain facial, parameters about themselves. We want to make sure that the model that we are developing is taking into account these things, or is being considerate of those ethical practices that other religions and other communities around the world have. So but this model is a customer churn model, so I don't have any ethical considerations. Now, some caveats and recommendations. So like I said earlier, we'll just say that this is recommended for use in geographies where the median age is between 20 and 50. Because when somebody is deploying the model to a business application, or when a business stakeholder is looking at it, they need to know that information. And then we submit, and we are done with the model creation workflow. Now, all of these, okay, so that's good. We got an error there. And so which means, because I did not give a model version number here. So if you see, I gave a model version 0. How funny, right? I can't have a 0 version of a model because our versions start with 1. And then I just go next. It tracks all the information. And then I go finishing and submitting my model card. Now, this model card will now be associated to the model that I provided in step 1. So as you can see, there's a customer churn model right here. Now, there are more and more actions you could take. You could export this to PDF and send it off for external auditors. You can clone, you can edit, and you can even delete the model card. So now, after this, this is where the model card comes in super handy. And now coming to the third feature that I want to demonstrate to all of you today, which is model dashboard. So let's say Sammy finished her model development process, documentation of the model, and she's ready. She finished the approval, and it's ready to be deployed. It's an approved model. So now she goes ahead, and she deploys, the ML engineer in your team deploys the model to the endpoint. And it is starting to make business inferences and is really impacting your business. But now, the marketing department, which funded this project for Sammy, has many such other models that they need to monitor. And they need to know which one is going off track, which one is not behaving well with regard to, say, feature attribution drift. Has there been any extra bias in the production data that was not there in my training data? Do I need to retrain the model? And that's where model dashboard, the third feature, will come in handy for our customers. So here, as you can see, in SageMaker model dashboard, this one, again, is accessible from the SageMaker console. You go into governance, and you just click model dashboard. And you can see a list of models that we have deployed at an endpoint and that are out there. You can also see that the risk rating for each of these models. You can see the alerts for 4 specific dimensions. Now, the model dashboard is built completely on top of SageMaker Model Monitor. And Model Monitor allows you to monitor your models for 4 dimensions: model quality, data quality, bias drift, and feature attribution drift. Now, as you can see, there are some models here with a blank, and I'm sure you're wondering what's going on there. And the reason there's a blank is, which means, hey, you have not been monitoring your product recommendation model for model quality. So that rings a bell to the user of the model dashboard to say, hey, why have I not been monitoring this model? Maybe I need to go ask my ML engineer to set up some monitoring for me. And that's where we will show you if a model is being monitored. And there's, you see, if it is not, you see a blank. And if it is monitoring and it is performing well, which means there were no deviations in performance in the real world, you will see this green where it says scheduled, which means everything is hunky-dory, you're good to go. And now, if you see that all these red triangles, which means you've set up your model monitor, the model monitor is active, but then it has had deviations and it is in alert. That is what that tells you. So then you can go in and you can double-click into a specific model, and you can look at that model and understand which specific endpoint is deviating. At what time did the deviation start? And that's the troubleshooting Ankur was talking about. And you can go and dive deep all the way from the dashboard where you get a bird's eye view to the smallest detail. And I'm going to show you just how. So as you saw, we clicked on the model. In the model dashboard, I clicked on the customer churn model. Now, the top section here gives you all the information about your model. On this, I can see the model card from here. I can see the model lineage from here. And then I can also see additional model details, which is how much infrastructure has this model been utilizing? What's the memory utilization? What's the GPU utilization? Something, very cost-conscious customers would certainly want to know. And what's your risk rating? Then you can see all the endpoints a model is deployed to, and you can see the status of your endpoints. This model is deployed to one endpoint, and it is in service. And then you've set up 4 different monitoring schedules, and some of these are in alert, or maybe they're all. Now you also know which monitor type they are, and they're running every hour, and they're all scheduled. And unfortunately, all the 4 monitoring schedules are in alert. Now, you must be wondering, what is this alert details column over here? So as you know, you're scheduled, let's take the first one, the data quality one, for example. You've scheduled the model monitor to run every hour. And now say every hour, it's going to compare your live production data, it's going to compare it against your baseline, and there's going to be some errors with the data quality. We all know productions and life's not perfect, right? But then now every hour, if there's a set of constraints that are going to be violated, your job is going to be in alert constantly. Now you may say, I expect certain amount of noise, and I only want the system to alert me if 3 out of 5 of these hourly runs are actually going to be violated. And that's where your alert details, and that's how you could customize your alert as well. And now, let's say we want to dive into one of these monitoring schedules and understand a little more. So say I clicked on the data quality one. So I come here, and it says, yes, it is scheduled, but the alert is it's an alert. And then it has been an alert since December 1st. And then you can also see the executions. And when you open the executions, you can see a list of all the constraints that it was that it had. You can see all the metrics that failed. When it failed, you'll see a list of your report for that specific monitoring schedule. So that's the end of the demo. But now let me see what certain customers have to say about the 3 features that we launched. So let's see what United Airlines has to say about us. So United Airlines has been using machine learning to improve customer experience by providing some personalized offers and enabling customers to use their travel readiness center. And one of the biggest uses of their ML is to extends to airport operations. And then they also do network planning and flight scheduling. And right after COVID hit, they saw a surge in travel right after the restrictions were lifted. And they needed to be more than ready ever than before. And so that's where they started using, they used SageMaker. But that's when we worked with them, they said, the model governance features, because they've seen such a high increase in demand for ML models, with governance, they're able to get the right control and the right visibility, and hence are able to scale up much easier than they ever were. So that's how the model governance features with the ML governance features within SageMaker are helping United Airlines. Now let's see what another customer way out in South Africa has to say to us. Capitec is a financial services company in South Africa, and they have a bunch of different types of clients that they're serving with varying product offerings. And their clients needed to trust them that the bank is taking the right decisions on behalf of the clients. And for them, they also said that with ML governance, they are giving them a lot more control, visibility, transparency, and trust. And because they are able to trust what they're doing with Amazon SageMaker with these governance features, that's building up trust with their own clients. And that's what we have. And now I would like to call upon Dom, VP at Fidelity Investments, to hear directly from a customer. Thank you a lot, and sorry for the trouble.
Hello, can everyone hear me okay? Great. I'm Dominic Centofanti. I am from Fidelity, and I am going to essentially bring you through some of the data that we've gone through, or sort of the experience that we've had so far using this tool. Fidelity is obviously, many of you have probably have touched Fidelity, right? We're number 1 in 401k, number 1 in personal investing, workforce investing, all those great areas. It has been a long journey for us. Obviously we're the ones that we may not have invented. We may not have invented the 401k, but we certainly, with Magellan, made it much more popular and started the returns on the investment to be much, much higher than any other that ever recognized before. Like I said, a pioneer in the mutual fund world with that product. But also on the technology side, we've been a pioneer. We were first to multi-cloud. We have expanded incredibly on the cloud, especially in AWS, that today we're running almost 4,300. Actually, that number is old, so it's over 5,000 now. So it has been certainly a tremendous journey for us. I'm sorry, I was on the next slide. So what are we sharing today? How we use machine learning at Fidelity. Let's start right there. So for us, we have hundreds of data scientists. We have hundreds of models in production. We have multiple platforms for model development and training. Many of the data scientists train either locally or develop locally, certainly, sometimes train locally, and then provide containers for us to deploy into SageMaker. We're trying to drive the adoption, and we're getting that number up further and further. But as of now, that is a key requirement for us, right? What we're really looking for, right, and what we have as well, is an ability to drive that going forward and increase not only the capability of model governance, but the quickly understanding and observing what's going on. If you think about the model generation process, right, and how it works, right? Model governance process, model operations process, how it works, right? Let's say somewhere between a month and 6 months from business ideation to deployment of the model, right? Then that model will run in production for years, right? So the model governance piece up front is important. The pieces we've talked about, role manager, on top of role manager, the model card, building that information in is critical, right? Because even though it's done early on, it is something that's going to be reviewed over and over again. Models will change versions. Critical for us as well is some of our models have to be really up to date. I mean, we constantly measure and understand what's going on in the social networks, especially amongst investors. Not only our own investors, but just in general to understand what's being said, what's become popular, what's the key things that we need to focus our antennas on to gather the information back, to replicate that into our system. So in that kind of world where, we spend 6 months deploying and using the governance and understanding all the components of it, and then years monitoring and making sure that model output is up to date and usable, that's where the piece that over time has been missed by many MLOps tools. And the promise we have seen with SageMaker MLOps is the ability to continue that pattern, to understand after it's been deployed how it is performing, what is the bias, how is the performance of the features going, something that has not been available in a lot of different tools that is critical for us. So my role at Fidelity is really twofold, right? Obviously, my ML engineers help the data scientists deploy their models, right? We help them build their environment in SageMaker. We help them manage their roles. We help them train. We help migrate their containers over. We do all these pieces for those who have chosen to develop externally. But to us, right, and we're also a key part of the governance process. We sit through from the intake all the way through approval by the model board to make sure that all the components being done comply, have met the requirements, and go forward. So it also falls to us to make sure that they're within the parameters of what is acceptable for us. Obviously, we're a financial service company. We take our data and our customers very, very seriously. And we have to ensure that the way we do things are well managed, within compliance, and done well. And on top of that, it has to be a sustainable environment. I don't have an infinite number of ML engineers. I just do not. And I've got to serve a large data science base with a fraction of the engineers that in sort of relation to data scientists. So the way we're going with this is that we're trying to build paved paths, right? And what I mean by paved paths is that as we look at model families and model types, we want them to follow along a specific pattern. They can vary, they can change the data coming in, they can essentially configure their model any way they want. But it needs to follow. We don't want people building 2 different types of classification models when it doesn't have to be done that way. We don't want people developing 2 different pipelines for taking data in. We want to make sure that everything that's being done is consistent so that it is maintainable and, here's the key thing, observable consistently, right? And that's the challenge. How do we continue to, because if we can observe it consistently, then we can identify any type of problems that occur, any type of bias, any type of deviation, and respond to it in a consistent manner, rather than every time something goes wrong on a bespoke project, on a bespoke model, that we have to go from scratch and dig into where it could have gone wrong. And that is critical for us for sustainability and scalability. So we have certainly deployed a number of frameworks and AWS frameworks, obviously, and we are in the process right now of driving more adoption through the ability to reuse and retrain on the capabilities. I'm sorry, on the artifacts that have been built up to that point for consistency. So let me start by showing you what sort of one of our pipelines look. One of our big products that has come up lately, one of our key pipelines these days, has been continuous training. We have certain models that change all the time, right? And I'm not saying they change once a month or once a year. They change daily. we're getting enough information daily that the model changes. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you folks lived through the GameStop, right? If you missed a week of GameStop data that was being put out by Reddit from Wall Street Bets, you missed the boat, right? Investment companies had a lot of issues that week trying to respond to the demand to fill those orders. You know, the newcomers, the disruptors in the industry, they fell down when that happened because they couldn't handle it, right? They didn't have the scalability and the capability to do it. Our models track that information. Our models look for that. So in order to capture something like that, we've got to train on the most constant data so we can extract the new topics. On top of that, the new entities that have happened. So we have to constantly retrain a lot of our NLP models to catch species like that. And in this case, when we first started, we built basically this pipeline manually, and we built a continuous training pipeline manually. And this is the bespoke pipeline we have here that constantly goes in, constantly runs against the data. When it sees new trends come in, it triggers the retraining. Right now, it's all manual. Hopefully, in the near future, using MLOps, it'll be triggered by SageMaker MLOps to do that work for us so that we have that capability built in. So in that sense, it continues to go. This piece right here, we would like to make it automated, and we see the promise of that in SageMaker MLOps. We see the ability to do that, to validate what has happened and notify and queue up what needs to be done. And that to us is critical, and I think it all starts from the two pieces that we talked about, right? How we develop the model card and how we develop the dashboard, right? How we put in the parameters that you saw Sai had entered there, and how we are able to then take that information when there are deviations from the norm and go in and trigger either an alert to a data scientist, new topics and entities have emerged, time to retrain, or on the other side of the equation, automatically do it because you've given us a threshold. Is when it's outside this threshold, retrain. Critical to us. So, and finally, sort of the last piece of this is sort of the closed loop, right? Go through, and just what I mentioned, is there enough decay that we need to rebuild it? Yes or no? Is there lift from the new retraining of the model? Yes or no? Determines whether or not we go forward with that. So this is sort of what we see. This is sort of just one example of the bespoke pipelines that we have built that certainly will benefit greatly from SageMaker MLOps. So as I said, I think I've mentioned this before, large number of data scientists, large number of models in development, paved paths. I've given a sort of an example of some of the paved paths we used. NLP, I think you just saw with continuous training. We obviously have video. We have also online and offline feature store. We are certainly a customer of Studio and certainly a customer of SageMaker Studio Feature Store, which has been one of the key deployments we've had in the last couple of years. I think we're one of the first deployers of it. So to us, these have been critical components to our ability to support such a large number of use cases, such a large number of models, such a large number of data scientists with a core of ML engineers. So I think I talked about this, but when you look at Role Manager, internally we have a Teams thread with all the data scientists on it, right? And unequivocally, the largest number of comments come, how do I get access to the training bucket, right? I can't see the training bucket for my SageMaker job. Those are generally the questions, right? We're essentially, we help them configure. We've set up accounts, we've set up, roles and policies, but always there's a deviation, there's a variation. Data scientists just want to go in and do it. They're used to doing it on, certainly off the SageMaker system, doing it on their laptop where they have complete control of what data they bring down, where that data sits, how they access it. It's a little bit different in the environment of SageMaker because a lot of that has to be managed very tightly because of our governance policies on data, on use of model. So for us, this is something that we will almost use right away to identify what we need to do, what we need to tag, what type of roles. The minimum level of roles for data scientists to have to do their job, right? The ability to understand different type of data scientists need to access different type of data based on the pipeline, based on the type of models they're doing. Gonna go a little bit faster. The model cards. This is where we see the art of the possible is greatest in the model cards. A lot of the data that we want to set alerts and triggers on may not be there now, but there's a great start to it. And over time, as more and more information is pulled into this, we have more and more information to trigger work that needs to be done. Send out alerts, identify pieces that need to be done, potentially as we get smarter with this, with that alert, provide what we think the actual cause of this is, rather than a message that model failed, right? Or model is biased, or model has outside of the threshold. Trying to provide more detail so we can resolve quicker. As I said, 1 to 6 months to build a model, years of it running, right? Yeah. ML engineers would love to always be doing new stuff, but we know we have to make sure we support the existing stuff because it's critical. So to us, that's the sort of the answer to our needs is a dashboard that we can look at, that a model card that we can put all the information in that then becomes available in a dashboard. That we can constantly monitor, we can configure as we need it, we can add columns, we can add some of the tags to understand the underlying sort of facets of how the model was built, deployed, executed, rolled out. Those are the sort of the critical needs, right? Because, and I go back to this all the time, right? There's not an infinite number of ML engineers out there. There really is not. And we have to do more with less. And by making a service like this available, we can do so much more with the existing staff that we have and support the data scientists better, get them to adhere more strictly to a pattern, and essentially we grow together and we help the business together. The bottom line is we're here to help the business. We help to understand the challenges they meet. And more importantly than the challenges they meet, our customers have needs. This is their retirement, this is their saving, this is their future. We cannot at any point, that provide anything but our very best effort at this. And this enables us to do more with what we have to help our customers move forward. So in summary, really quick, governance capabilities that are provided by Amazon SageMaker, MLOps, plus what's been there in model monitoring is going to be great. For us, we see a lot of capabilities for this. We've been playing with it for now 4 to 5 months, and it's been, so far, very pleased with what we've seen. We evaluate integration with more governance capability as time comes over. And right now, just what we see right now is the ability to have a common history and versioning, which I think has not been something that we've been able to do outside of the manual process. And developing the best practices across that for role manager and model cards is something we will evolve into. Right, every day is day one, right? This is our day one with SageMaker Model Ops. So I want to just share this with you. This is the product webpage, technical documentation. I'll give everyone a minute if anyone wants to copy this or take a picture of it so they can go there. All right, so one thing I really want to tell you all is that Fidelity is still hiring. We are still hiring. So if you're interested, there's supposed to be a slide here at the end. I thought it was here before, but obviously I can see it here. I just can't see it there. Let me try this again. I've gotten too used to the Mac world that I really can't. It's fine. So that's all I have. We have 13 seconds for questions. Go. Thank you.